Well, hello everybody. This is a bit awkward because it's all one-sided for me, but here we are on the DConf. Hopefully you can see my screen and my font is adequately large. So the goal today is I'm going to make a little game similar to the old Asteroids game, and with any luck we'll have it online multiplayer and working in WebAssembly. And I've already started a little bit of it, and we're going to go through and hopefully get the rest of it up and running before we run out of time today. We'll go pretty much as far as we can. So a little bit of background information here. I have these big libraries called Simple Display and CGI that give me the ability to quickly slap together D websites and little desktop applications. And I've been doing partial ports of those over to WebAssembly lately. And if we go to my little website, you can see a few of them running, like, little Tetris game. And ones like Minesweeper, which also work just as well. Minesweeper, which also works just as well as an ordinary application up here, as you can see. It's very exciting. So today we're going to, start with this little one that I've already put some pieces down and just advance. And apologies, I'm actually, those of you who know me know that I'm basically always procrastinating something. So I've got a little bit going on over on my other computer. So what I've already pieced together is just this little bit. This part is going to be the client application, and then this part will be our server application, and I've just put the skeleton down to get us started. So what we've got to do to get the actual game going is start drawing some objects. So let's start off with a little timer. I might actually have to reconnect. So here's the client. So I've pieced together a few of these WebSocket things. I'm actually going to come back to that a little bit later and instead start focusing on just putting the main loop together. We'll shoot for 60 frames per second. I'll need a list of game objects. Oh, how did I define that? Type, want to ship. And the most interesting thing I like to do is I want to have something on the screen as basically as quickly as I can. So we're going to go through and just try to loop through and start drawing them. Now up here I defined some little vertices in polar coordinates, so I really just want to start drawing on the window and just connect those dots. So set a color. Let's fill it all to black. That's just to clear a screen, then for each object go ahead and redraw them. Fill color. And so up here again, there's a type that I'm going to define each object, and then you got a static immutable that just lists what each of these means, and those have a vertex. So it's kind of an awkward way to do it, but there's a reason that I'm doing that, and that's to help do central updates and rewinding later. And up here, this is a fun little trick too. So to define the round object, I just put it in a static immutable, and this little CTFE function spits out the necessary points. Oh, just a sec. What unusable trash. Oh, I just got a question over here. I'm using the Blackbox window manager. I've customized this over the years, and this little taskbar down here is my own, and the terminal emulator is my own, and inside the terminal emulator you have this program is called Attach, and that's kind of like the new screen that's also custom. And the reason all of this stuff is so custom is that I don't like having to use separate key presses when I'm in the multiplexer versus in the naked terminal. So my custom thing will send if there's a full screen application, it sends all of that data down the line all the way, so I can nest it arbitrarily, and then it'll send the data back up to the top. So for example, if I were to copy and paste, instead of doing it on some custom GNU screen or detached or whatever, it sends a copy system all the way up. So if I'm connected by SSH, it will actually copy to the local clipboard instead of to some other bizarre thing. So all that stuff just works as I bounce between the desktop and the laptop. Alrighty. Anyway, where was I? So I want to start off by drawing the ship, and that goes into game object types. Object.type, and then I just need to loop through its vertexes. Is that how we want to do it? No. and this is a polar coordinate, so to translate that over to a regular coordinate, we just need vertex radius times the cosine angle yes, that's right. And then you do x and y. And drop to the next one. Just fetch the next one. And I need the index now. Now another thing you'll notice here is I actually like using the mouse. There's tons of people who hate it, but when you see something, you just click on it and it jumps to it. So I actually really like doing it that way. You don't need, ooh, there. There is my link. I'm finally opening a live chat in the other window. I've been, okay. Yeah, today's actually been a crazy day for me. I have to admit that I've been basically bouncing around. I jumped on the last thing. So I'm now catching up on the chat. But yeah, my keyboard, by the way, is a Microsoft Natural, no, it's not. It's a Microsoft Wired Keyboard 200. It cost me $10. So it works when it wants to work. I should replace it at some point. Love the. Yeah, and the file names here, they're actually truncated because. So my typical window looks a little more like this, and I cranked the font size up so hopefully y'all can see it a little bit better. But now that we're drawing some points, if I did this right, I should be able to. I have to translate it plus object.x. Object.y. With any luck, I'll be able to actually run this thing. Of course, there's random errors because I left out a comma. Something that bugs me, by the way, about DMD is if you leave out a comma or a bracket, you really do get like a lot of error spam. Basically, I only pay attention to the first one. Undefined reference to main because I need to client. And this is another thing that actually bugs me about all these annoying implicit conversion errors. Like, come on, I use the type, just let me use the type. But it won't let it, so I have to cast int, stick that on each line, end it, throw that down. Now, what key handler? That's because I did not put in the delegate keyword. Oh, there's my little thingamajigger. And obviously, you can barely see the little dot of a line, so I messed something up. But we're getting there. So, what did I mess up this time? The radius, that is perfectly fine. Did I put it in the definition? Oh yes, there's two radii. One is the game object itself. Radius. Slow that down. There we go. I did not close the connection, but you got more or less the beginnings of your asteroid ship popping up. So to close the connection, I just need to go back to the last one. And you know what, I'm just going to add that back in the definition. There's my little ship. So now the next interesting thing is going to be starting to get some control over it. And for that we want a keyboard handler. Now the way I need to do this with a little bit of caution, because later on when we try to switch it to an online version, these keyboard handlers are going to be telling the central server what the move is, and then we'll be back online. But for now, if ev dot, what is it called, key switch, I think it's, so I wrote this library and I use it often enough, but I still forget names. So more often than not, I actually go back to an old program and I copy paste into a new one. I do that all the time. But we want dot left. And for now I'm just going to plot down object. Let's just translate it and see what happens. Hey, I can move. So that's and another thing I like about these simple games, by the way, I always want, like I said before, I want something to be visible that you can really sink your teeth into. And that's why on the simple display documentation, there's a bunch of complete programs you can just copy paste and start editing. So now you don't have to worry about the boilerplate, and for two, you have something you can immediately start to, actually have some fun with. The problem is, once it gets legitimately playable, I will never finish it, because I'll just be too busy playing it. Now what I actually do here, I want it to be a vector movement, so it's going to change the angle. Let's just go 0.01 radians and see how that feels. But now that we have a movement over here, down here when the game is updated, we actually need to somehow update that. So since I'm updating, it's a strut, I'll need ref dot angle plus equals object dot delta angle. And then over here this is the vertex angle, but we also need the object's angle to be included. Angle. And now if I've hit my controls, I can actually rotate the little thing. How exciting. And there's more chat going on. Error spam. And you guys might also notice this is my first time ever doing one of these live streams, so it's all like very new to me, even keeping up on this. It's kind of bizarre to talk into a thing and then read the chat back. And if you guys ever jump on the BeerCon streams or any work meeting with me, I'm the guy always typing stuff while other people talk. So it's really it's weird being on the other side of it now. Setting it up. Yeah, they're all talking about editors. I switched to Vim back in 2007, and I've gotten more or less used to it now. So someday I will create my own text editor, just like the true Jedi, but that day is not today. Anyway, so now that we've got our little ship drawing, I want to be able to thrust. So, up, objects. And this will multiply by its position. Oh yeah, my little dog usually sleeps behind me, so you can see her quite a bit too. And then my baby's taking a nap, so she will not be jumping on this call unless she wakes up. But the formula for this is pretty simple. Cosine object angle plus some random, and then the y is of course the sine. So a little fun bit of history here. One of my earliest things programming on was a TI-83 calculator. I was in 9th grade math class, and the teacher's like, this thing has a basic interpreter on it. So I'm like, I'll play with that. What did I do? Oh yes. But one of the things it had was a parabolic coordinate system, as I recall. But I immediately looked at it, and I made this little thing called rotate that just did this calculation right here, cosine, sine, and you could move stuff around. So this is kind of a recreation of one of the earliest programs I ever actually did. Oh, that did not. That obviously did not work. And why didn't it work? Because I'm not actually using that delta x yet. X plus equals delta x y y. Oh yeah, now my ship is moving. Very exciting. Now another little thing. So back on my web browser, I made this little server program. Actually, its source code is up here. So this little server program will go to whatever path I tell it to do and try to compile a D program into WebAssembly. So all I have to do is drop some stuff in there and refresh this page, and I can see some code running. So I click my force recompile, and hey look, it works in WebAssembly already. And if any of you want to goof around while we play, please don't spam force don't spam the force recompile, but hit it every so often so you update. And you can really follow along. Anyway, my email's coming in. Back to the Rhonaroids. So now that we can actually start moving this thing around, the next thing that's going to be fun is throwing in some more objects. And I want to add an asteroid. I will start it quite a ways down. But going back, remember this is a type index into this array of objects. So if I go 0, 1, 2, that should be a 24 sized asteroid. And this is what player owns at 0 is neutral. So if I throw that in, it should basically be there already. And now you'll notice I call this thing Rhonaroids, and I'm playing with a little coronavirus. This one has a little bit of a spike. It looks like a star. Obviously those are the protein spikes that it uses to infect cells. And just I did make this little program Thursday just to demo, and the idea is that they can infect. Now it's too complex to recreate in 1 hour, though it took me like 4 hours to put that together. So we're simplifying a bit for this. But now that we have an object, and I want to close that item again, so let's just do, you know what, I really want it to close over here. If I'll come back to that. But now that our little object can move, if I go angle dy dx, just from, whoops, wrong program. Just from this, we already have a little moving object. Yeah, so yes, I did code all of this in D, and that's part of why it works so nicely. So over here, I have too many files open, but this is the big file simple display.d. So to give you a little bit of background on this, back when I started programming, I'm a fan of the old Final Fantasy games, so I wanted to make my own clone, more or less, of the Final Fantasy. And I was working for Microsoft DOS at the time, which means you poke around the video memory and it shows up on screen. It was the simplest experience I've ever had. And now when I switched over to Windows and later Linux, I wanted to recreate that, and I was never quite able to. You can shared memory is about as close as you get, and you still have to blitz stuff, and it's just slow. So I ended up starting this new library. Now, very early on, I would use SDL. Oh, I hope this program still loads. Where is it? Engine. Maybe the Windows version will work. Nah, it won't. Well, anyway, so I started using SDL for a couple of years, and I started with back in 2006, 2007-ish. But I always I don't like distributing DLLs with my programs. I want it all to stand alone, and I don't want a complex build process. Actually, going back here, you'll notice my build here, it's just DMDI, which is a little script on my system. Bin DMDI. And all it does is it just call DMD with a few library paths set up, and then the -i switch. And -i is probably my favorite thing to come in the last few years, because what I would previously do is to just list all of the files. So I go list and then simple display, and actually I think that's all. Yeah, that's all that one needs. With a dash version equals client. But and because of the Websocket, but that compiles it just as well. But it's so convenient now to have this little script where it pulls on all that. But as a result of me actually typing this stuff all the time, that's one of the reasons why I try to avoid using a whole bunch of extra modules. If I have to type in a million things, it's going to annoy me. So I try to make one module do a job and do it completely, so I don't have to load in a whole bunch of other stuff. But the downside of that, back to the simple display source code, it's now 17,078 lines. And that says it's trying to do more or less everything about creating a window. I have integrated OpenGL bindings in here. I have, which I'm not using. This is just plain lines. Like any computer can do that. It's trivial. But I've got implementations. We just scrolled past. This is the Mac. Well, no, this is the Mac implementation, and then you have the X11 implementation, and then a little ways up there's the Windows implementation. And I did all of them without extra libraries, so I don't have to depend on DLLs and distribute them. And another benefit, check this out. So if I so I want to compile that simple display program. Well, obviously it requires color. But that's a quarter-second recompile for the library from scratch. And it's hard to beat that when you're using something else. As a result, my builds tend to be reasonably quick. And now when I did WebAssembly, instead of having to compile some big program, and let me just Rhonaroids.wasm. This is a 60 kilobyte program that more or less stands alone. That's a reasonable download. And I think the live chat lags about 3 minutes, but whenever I mention simple displays lengths, people go a little bit crazy. So I'm guessing you just saw that. Yes. But this little 60 kilobyte program is pretty nice. Yes, I can. I'll show you my little program mini doing in just a second. But what I did for WebAssembly is instead of compiling that whole program, which has a lot of platform-specific code, what I did was create a new program that implements the same classes as I need them, that actually calls back out to JavaScript. Why do I have that? I don't need that. Anyway, so this is when I do new simple window on Windows and Linux, it calls out to this monstrous. You get the idea. It'll eventually call create window and blah blah blah. So this is how you would create a window using the X library on Linux. Well, on JavaScript, you don't need any of that. You just want an HTML canvas. So What this version does, this eval function I wrote to, it takes a string from D, sends it out to JavaScript, and evaluates it. So this little bit is some JavaScript. And as you can see, it just gets this from the pre-made HTML, add in a canvas, and set a few attributes. And this native handle is a little ref-counted index back into a JavaScript array. I'll probably go into more detail on this momentarily. But as a result, I have these basic functions. Here's a keyboard handler, which is an absolute hack of a time. It only handles these 5 keys, which conveniently are all that I need. And then it calls out to a global function that just hacks its way back in. Passing delegates, I did that for, I just wrote this earlier this morning. This is the Websocket binding for JavaScript. And you see it sets a function, and then it takes the JavaScript data, manipulates it, and then calls invoke DArrayDelegate, and it passes the pointer and the function separately. So over on the D side, I can reconstruct the delegate and call it again. But the tricky part for this is that I need to handle various types that all translate differently. So I hacked and just said it's an array delegate, and it erases the type and reconstructs it later. So it works for now, but it's not ideal. But now let me show you one other cool thing Simple Display is able to do. GUI test. So this is my program GUI test. This is I wrote another library built on it, which is called minigui.d. And the main point there is to make the map editor and sprite editor for my little RPG. So there's that, and the map editor is actually pretty fancy. And you can scroll around. So I wanted to make my own little widgets and controls so I can do all of this stuff. And I'm doing it from the ground up because GTK is too bloated and Qt requires too many DLLs. So I'm doing it all myself. But on Windows, my Wine is kind of a broken installation. On Windows though, it uses the native elements the operating system provides. So I'm able to get that realistic Windows look and feel while still having my customization, and there's no dependencies for any of this other stuff. So that's very exciting to me. That map editor, this is a debug build, I'm pretty sure. But map editor.exe is 1 megabyte, kind of a lot, but since it stands alone, it's more palatable to me than having to send down 8 megabytes of Qt, DLLs, and so on. And MiniGUI is a whole other fun experiment. I will demonstrate this very, very quickly. I get sidetracked easily, but that's okay. The whole point is just to see what's going on. Noise. So noise.d here uses MiniGUI's new decorative UI layout. So I wrote a control, and I just put some UDAs, and it says controlled by a button that says start stop. And this is the volume. It's controlled by a vertical slider. And then down here, I just tell it to add data control widget. And now the result of this is I have a little program that has its layout built in, and as I interact, that background sound is generated by this. So I can go through the enums and really tweak that data without having to write a whole bunch of annoying UI bindings. And I will also demo. So back in that little paint program, you saw a menu. Well, the source code for that is a bunch of functions. So it goes UDA menu, open it, and then I have a function new, open, save. And the library creates the UI menu based on this code and just calls my functions. And I think that's where D's really going to shine with a GUI library. It's not so much the implementation of the widgets, like anyone can do that. That's a solved problem. but the D API is able to utilize the static reflection to do stuff that other languages more or less can't. And I've had great success with that in the web programs too. So this is a little program using my CGI.d, and this table does not, there is no HTML template, there is no, I hope I have the source code. That's it. And I'm sorry, I just opened my window with the small text again, but I'm sidetracking, so let me sidetrack. But what this does is, this is the employees listing, and I just have a class that's a thing with an index function, and it returns the input, the index result, which is just an array of employee objects, and it's able to use that array to create this full list. And this is an individual item with a little bit of formatting, and this form is generated from the definition of the struct. So it says, okay, ID is an item, give it input type numeric. And this is an early example, but it saves me a lot of time, because instead of writing routers and views and controllers and all that nonsense, I just write functions and let the library reflect over it and spit some stuff out to me. Anyway, I have a little diversion into, oh yeah, and this noise program uses an audio library. Yeah, the UDAs needing to call functions, sometimes it bugs me, but usually it doesn't, because I want to be able to call a function on it anyway. For example, when I added that widget to the window, I want to tell it which window it goes into, and since I'm calling a function, I take that opportunity to do the reflection right there and then. Okay, where was I? I am talking way too much and making my, but just a little bit more. This is my library, and it is on the dub, but only like half the files are actually in here, because dub and my development style don't fit very well together, so it's kind of a hacky pludge to make it fit at all. But I list sub packages for all of my independent files. And I don't think audio is in here. It is not. But simple display is in here. Mini GUI is in here. You can use those with dub to start playing along. Other little treats hidden in here. This is CGI. This is my HTML library I wrote a long time ago. It parses tag soup. UDAs, yes. I have image parsing, email parsing. This is vector graphics. There's an SVG parser hidden in here. Database access, JSVAR and script are a little scripting language that again, they're completely standalone in their own files. So you can drop in a script to your program just by adding these two files, and the interop is really cool. But I will come back to that some other time, because today I'm not showing that section. But there's other libraries hidden in the GitHub that are not available, like simple audio.d. Look at my commit messages, awesome stuff. I don't do a good job logging. Work stuff, I write paragraphs, like that's different, people read that. This is just for myself. But if it's useful to you, hopefully it'll work. But the audio library, there's doing the background sound for that RPG, and that program I popped up is a little noise generator for the baby's room. And I made it can also record audio, and I have this way cooler than it should be MIDI keyboard that it can also interface with, and I made a little MIDI sequencer. So really, if there's something you can do with an operating system, there's a good chance I've done it to some degree. And the libraries might not be documented, they might not be officially published, but you might be able to figure them out. Anyway, where was I? So back to this little game. Now that we have, I really need to close. That bugs me. So now that we have our stuff written, we want to, the last function here is to be able to shoot. Key dot space objects, and where was the bullet? Oh yes, the calculator watch. I got the this is the Casio. I got it in 5th grade. My original one died on me back in 2014ish, and then I was glad to see they still sold the exact same model, so I bought the same one. So, and my bullet vertex is up here in position 1. So this is a bullet. It's owned by me. It's a bullet. And then I need to... bullets don't really have hit points. They're not that interesting. Bullets have no control. No cooldown. So now we go into... And if we had the named arguments, I think I'd probably use them here. But this is all... So let me explain a design decision between this. The reason everything has these same elements, when we go multiplayer, I need to be able to shoot something down the control wire to do updates. And by just standardizing all the objects based on some minimal definition, I should make the server simpler. And if I keep talking about other stuff, we'll never get to that server mode at halfway point. But X, Y, A, and DA. So we need to be at the player's position plus the player's radius. Let's just put that out a little bit, times the cosine of whatever direction the player is facing. So that's its X position, its Y position, that should be angle. Whatever angle, it doesn't matter. The calculator for where? No. Align 1 is absolutely not a good idea for cross-platform. And I get away with that because I know what all the targets are. So this is going to be sending down to WebAssembly, which itself is a little endian 32-bit system. So no, you shouldn't do that in general. Here I get away with it because I control both sides. So the bullet also will inherit the shooter's motion plus, again, the shooter's angle times whatever speed I want to give the bullet. Let's give it 12. dy sine. So I left that trailing comma there because D rots and it will allow me to continue using that. What? This is it. This is game object types. What's my radius? Why am I looking it up? I know it's 16. I'm just going to use 16. Switch case fall through, for real? It is real. I forgot to break. Thanks, DMD. If you have a browser, try going to that and let me know if it works. Something did not shoot my little object. You know what? I'm going to change these controls pretty soon, but that's okay. Yeah, I like to, in all the D conferences I've worn suits, so this one is no change. And yes, it's pointed out that in my little map editor, I was using tiles from Dragon Warrior 3, and yeah, technically it's copyright infringement. I'm making that game for myself. I may never distribute it because while I've been trying to learn music composition, I'm really bad at it. And the people who are actually mini-doing Many GUI's native Mac support is very, very partial. I'm starting to... A user contributed a Cocoa implementation to me back in like 2011, and it bit-rotted a lot over those years. It still kind of works. You can create a window with it, but you can't do anything interesting with it. I intend to use Edson and Objective-C to bring that back to life, but right now, yes, you should use the Ed's version. Switch case fall-through is useful when you have... Well, so let's say I wanted to do a little bit of setup and then continue down to the main thing. The way you would do that in D is go to case. And now you told the compiler explicitly, I want you to connect this with this, and it will do it and turn off that error. So where was I? I need to combine... Ah yes, the old bullet, that's where I was. So I'm trying to put this together. I have owner, type, headlines, control state. I'm going to go with some X, Y. There is no reason for that to not be showing up for me. I bet you 12 is just too fast. Let's slow that thing down. Nope. Remember, at 60 frames a second, when that stuff moves. I actually don't know why that bullet's not showing up. Someone else is on the chat. Yeah, I agree. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. Yeah, when you're doing an empty list, you can, like, let's say I wanted to offer WASD, I could just go case key.w, or I guess it'd be A for that style, and now both of these would be equally valid. I'm not going to do that here because I haven't implemented key mapping in WebAssembly aside from these basic keys. So I'm going to pretend, I could show you how that works, but I'll come back to that some other time. So we have an object. Why doesn't this work? That's dy. I really don't know what I screwed up on that. Maybe it's just because I never closed the line. That is a virus image in the video feed, and that is a public domain virus image from the United States government, so I'm not copyright infringing. Yeah, so when you look at my live feed, my screen is a 1280 by 1024. I don't like widescreen monitors. It's like I notice a lot of people who use widescreen monitors use the snap things to put stuff to the left and the right. And that's because it's just too wide. So instead I just use the same monitor I've had for 13 years, and I'm pretty happy with it. Like if I want to put more stuff on the screen, that's what windows are for. This is a solved problem. Oh yeah, another reason why I have the custom terminal emulator. You see these little icons down here on my taskbar. Since I have 50 emulators open, if they were all the same, I couldn't pick them out at a glance. So instead I assign a little icon to each one. And this is, if I were to, I can move it from there to here. And now this one picks up the icon, and then this one will get it back. So I'm able to help keep my stuff somewhat organized and keep track of where I am. I'm running across. Oh my. Yes, you see people using a million monitors. Like, do you want to pay all the electric bill? Maybe that's not your concern. But my carbon footprint is pretty small. I'm trying to keep it that way. That and my desk is a... let me show you my desk. my desk is a cluttered piece of random nonsense, so I really don't need to add any more stuff to it as it is. So now, why am I not seeing this? So I did a practice run Wednesday, and I did not anticipate losing the bullets. That's some nonsense right there. That's way too much. Tell me where my bullets are at. Yeah, that's a bullet. It's there, but it's not. I just can't see it. It's probably because I just need to close these. So when I go up here and I make round objects, let's just cheat first. Wait a minute, I have an array. There, place that object for me. Yeah, now it's closed and my bullet's still not there. So when I made my, you know what? This is weird. In the practice run, I anticipated I would have trouble with the vertex positions. That's not a bad idea. But I anticipated I would screw up the networking. I've never done an online multiplayer game before, so I anticipated I would screw that up. But drawing the thing, that was one of the first programs I ever wrote, and I managed to screw that up. Import. I actually do have dual monitors. I'm cheating a little bit. My second monitor is where I have the... So, there's my second monitor. And that's where I start the chat. And even my custom... my custom window manager uses its own thing. So, my mouse cursor... and you can share screen, you don't need that. But... if I put it all the way towards the right, left, top, bottom, so it stays on this one screen. But if I go down to the lower right, let it slide, now the mouse will smoothly slide over to my other screen. And as a result, I can leave screen 2 turned off most of the time because I really don't want it most of the time. It's convenient to have. But what that lets me do is I can pretend it's not there, but if I want it, I can slide stuff through that corner very easily. It's Fitz's law to the max. It's much nicer than moving to the right and having your cursor disappear on you when only one screen is on. Vertex. Angle. Those angles look reasonable. It's going all the way up to 2 pi. That's where they belong. You know, maybe this is a good chance to. Over on the native version, there's a function called draw polygon, and it takes a vertex point like this. So, if I really wanted to, I could implement that in the WebAssembly version. So this is something I did want to bring up. When I do my library development, I don't like tagging releases because I don't feel like it's ever done. what I do is I lay the framework for myself to use, and then when need be, I'll go back and add it. So I have a warning over here that GL Gen Pro use program, that's what it's called. So I have a warning here that my OpenGL bindings aren't 100% complete. And if you want something 100% complete, there's BindBC OpenGL, which is built off of the specification. So that has everything you need. But for me, I have this nice little list here. And if I want to add more, all I have to do is pull open this window and go GL whatever, and boom, it's done. That's all there is to it. It takes me all of 5 seconds to do. And as a result, since I can jump across these boundaries and add stuff, if I need a new library function, I just add it. And if I don't need a library function, I don't. And so I do it in a very lazy way. As soon as I need it, I'll make it. But that doesn't really jive with the release, because when you release something, people assume that it's all there. And it might be, it might not be. I really don't promise that. I promise that if what I do have there is going to keep working. I've maintained this for 10 years now, and I'll keep doing that. But there's no guarantee that something that's not there is going to be just because it's in the spec. But by laying the groundwork here, I just write interface, here's all the stuff, and now I can paste in these definitions like it's nothing. And then this little Mitson dynamic load reflects over that interface and does all this crazy DL open or get load library, get proc address, etc., etc. And it creates it and mixes in the function pointers. So this is what a lot of the derelicts and BindBC programs will do, but they do it ahead of time, whereas I do it a little bit more lazily. But it ultimately works really, really quite easily. And this little thing down here at the bottom of the file, I don't like my files importing each other because that forces a dependency. But scriptable here is it's actually just a string that I can attach on UDAs throughout the library, and then my script language will pick that up and automatically bind to it. So I have all kinds of cool stuff. Okay, undo that nonsense. So back to the WebAssembly. Let's say I wanted to add a draw polygon function over here. That's under the painter. So I go, simple display is a large file. It does everything I need it to do. So I'd say draw polygon. And I want this source compatible with the other one, so I go point. Now when you're drawing on a HTML5 canvas, it uses these path functions. And I draw, so I'm going to take rectangle, but instead of a rectangle, I will go move to. Actually, how will I do this? Because that's an array. Vim actually slows down when it opens simple display, and it drives me nuts. It should be able to handle that. It's really, you know, you think 17,000 is a lot, but it's not. The computer does, I don't even know how many operations a second, but millions, billions, whatever. Whatever it is, it's a very large number that's a lot bigger than that. And if you can't handle 17,000 lines, then I think the program's a piece of garbage. So there's my opinionated rant for the day. But if I wanted to draw a polygon, a point needs to be, I need to actually move those into, now let me show you, when you do a JavaScript binding, right now I only support sending the most basic functions. WebAssembly is kind of strict. Everything is really just an integer. So if I want to send it a string, this template here goes through all these type families and converts it into something simple. So here's a case of string. and I give it a type tag, and then the two integers that I send down are pointer and length. And this is built into a little structure, which you can in fact read as a something. I don't remember. That's why I have to look back at it. But then this function here in JavaScript, these are all the integers it sends over. And then when I send, let's say the string in D is represented as length pointer. So now I have to go into this view into the memory buffer, which in JavaScript means new. And to D, I'm like, you can't new a slice. It's madness, but that's the way it works in JavaScript. But then you tell it pointer string into that buffer, and then you can decode it into an ordinary JavaScript string. And this little s is used down here to create a new function, which is ultimately what we call. So when I do eval, it sends this D string over. This turns it into a pointer length. This turns it back into a JavaScript string, which is then turns into a JavaScript function that I can actually call. And it will again return some kind of value that I have to tag and turn back into an integer that D can interpret on the other side. So when I pass a string back, it needs to malloc something, copy the data into it, and then tell me where that pointer is. And on the D side, well, again, the return value, it will turn that into a pointer, and the length it knows is inline Pascal style. So now I can reinterpret cast it back into something usable by D. And since that's malloc on the D side, in theory the garbage collector could pick all that up and clean things up for me. In practice, I have not written that garbage collector, so if you leave my WebAssembly thing running, it will leak memory. But if I wanted to send a strut down, I'd have to do something similar to this, and that's somewhat complicated. So instead, we can just try to make a @sys y's, and I'll just points @sys @. Yeah, I've turned the match lines a little bit, but it's still too high. And by the way, this is so the array append operation back in D is implemented by the D runtime, and it looks, which function is it? So append. There, show me append. It's not broken anymore. I fixed that. But the append function here is kind of it was a joy figuring out how this thing worked. But it sends a type info, then it claims to send a ref byte. It is not a ref byte. It's something else, and you have to reinterpret cast it to get it right. But whenever you do the tilde equals, the compiler rewrites it into one of these, and dot length gets rewritten into that, and then it does some mem copy and mem move and assignment at actually putting the data in. But you have to prepare the way for it somehow, and this code is what I did to allow that. And then there's all the type info spam. But see, that's my D runtime. It's 300 lines, and it's able to support a good chunk of the language, and including classes and built-in arrays. But again, it leaks memory, so it's not as beautiful as it may seem. But let's say I were to copy this in, but my point with that is here I am leaking even more memory because it will discard a bunch of blocks. But now I should be able to tell it @sys y's, which is the word yes. And what this eval function, first it takes a string, and then the rest of these things are sent through, and over in JavaScript, you can C too, but both C and JavaScript you can start a variable with a $sign. It's just an ordinary variable to them. So when I create my function, where was that? But when I create my function, I take these argument names, and it just builds a string based on that, and then it loads them into an array. And JavaScript, you can send an array of arguments with the apply function. So then it applies all that. It knows what the names are because of the function definition built up by the string, which is eval. And then over here I'm able to use them in the order that they were sent. I'm not actually going to finish this. I just looked at the clock. I'm way off topic. But that's how you would do that. So let's go back to the actual point here. My stupid bullet is still not showing up. What if I change the definition? Bullet vertices. Let's make it look the same as the Rona. No reason why that shouldn't show up. Apparently I'm doing something else wrong. You know what I could be doing wrong? It could be that stupid array append. Maybe it's still broken after all. That's okay, we don't need to shoot stuff. Let's move on to the network side actually. I'll come back if I can. Now, this here is the network server. And I was talking to myself because I don't know how to write an online game. But this uses CGI. I made a little make file that keeps all the settings I need. CGI.d has a whole bunch of different settings. It can do traditional CGI programs that you just dump into a CGI bin. It can do simple CGI servers, fast CGI servers, and various forms of an embedded web server. And again, it's all self-contained in this one file, which is now 10,000 lines. But it's all self-contained, so you can make your little web server without needing to pull in all kinds of crazy dependencies. If you're trying to do a little embedded thingy, you can easily fork this program and do your own thing, which I know at least one person has. And it was kind of funny. He and I would send each other patches. He's like, "Oh, did you fix this yet?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I fixed it a long time ago." But now we're starting to sync back up. But what CGI.d is able to do, this is based on, I wrote this when I got sick of using PHP. I use this one code base where someone was modifying the super globals. And if you don't know any of PHP, so you have these get whatever that's supposed to represent the stuff from the URL. X equals Y. But then someone would go function foo and modify that bloody thing. And then later on, it would go and actually use that. And it was absolute madness. It drove me nuts. So as soon as I started writing this in 2008, which predates Immutable. But as soon as D added Immutable back in, it's like version 2.006, something like that. But as soon as they added Immutable, I went nuts with it. And I made CGI.get here be fully immutable. The definition here, my go-to definition might work. It will not work. My go-to definition is broken. I really need to fix that. That's immutable string. I went really quite nuts using the immutable keyword. So now the CGI constructor has to set all of this stuff up. Here's get. But then it's immutable, so you can never modify this nonsense ever again. And then it's all contained inside this one object, so you don't have super globals jumping all over the place. But then the code you start off something very simple like naked PHP in 2008, where you can go ahead and write your stuff. And then over time I wrote this other thing called web.d, which uses the reflection to generate stuff from a D class. And I still have that. But this was made back when there's my compatibility for old versions. But this was made before we had UDAs, and when the reflection was still pretty janky. So there's an awful lot of really hideous code in here, and I've been meaning to rewrite it for a long time. And I've finally started doing that, and that's with the CGI dispatcher. But we don't need to do any of that here, so why am I talking about it? Undo, back to the original. But anyway, you have all these different versions, and one will use fork to create processes, one will pop off a bunch of threads, and then there's this hybrid which creates threads, and then it creates fibers, and then it distributes those among processes. So it's using really it's a case of all of the above. And the threads give you broad compatibility. The processes give you resilience against a GC pause, because a GC stops the world, but its world is its process. So if you fork off, it will not affect the other one, meaning that one can continue to serve while you're busy. And then the fibers let the long-lasting connections stay without occupying a worker thread. And in a benchmark, I went from, I used to do good at low concurrency and then drop off hard at high concurrency. And using this approach, it does a pretty consistently decent job. And the fiber code, by the way, is actually really simple. There's not a whole lot to it. And when you jump down, and just instead of calling the function, it wraps it in the fiber. When you do a wake up, there's already two functions that do I/O. So I just had it. First you yield, and then when you're back, you just set you have the operating system wake you up. So it ended up being not a whole lot of code. And as a result, I was able to retrofit this new idea that Vibe really showed what you can do with it. And Vibe did a great job demonstrating the potential. And now I'm able to retrofit that back into my old code and get not all the benefits, but a lot of the benefits. Anyway, one of the things inside here is a whoops, wrong file. It is a WebSocket server, and WebSockets tend to be a long-lived connection, so you don't want to keep your worker threads busy, and they tend to, I want them to share information, so I do not want it to fork. As a result, my configuration is hybrid, so it uses those fibers, and no fork, so I can actually use shared memory over here. And then the server itself, pretty straightforward. I accept a WebSocket, and then I just go ahead and loop in it until it's done. Typically you would just handle a request and return, but WebSockets, again being long-lived, you have to do them differently. So let's say I want to go over to this client. Let's connect to the WebSocket. And now instead of changing the stuff immediately, I'm going to send a message up to it. I want to, from up top, I made a control update here. I am talking too much and I'm wearing out my poor voice. I will actually split that window. So now when I do down here, I want to do send the control update CU. Oh, I just realized something. That if I do it this way, I might send uses a scope pointer, but it might invalidate it. So just to be safe, I'm actually going to. Oh, I wonder if that'll work on WebAssembly. I should test that. Nope. The new item is not a function. I have not implemented that yet. Yeah, screw it. We'll be fine. If the stack gets smashed, the stack gets smashed. It's not my problem. But I want to send a control update and do new control state is going to be, this is left, let's call that 1. New control state mask equals again 1. Owner is myself. I should set the time, but I haven't yet. So then I'm going to want to do what do they call it? WS? I did. So I do ws.send, and instead of sending oh yeah, my autocomplete, you might notice here, is just Vim's built-in thing. So if I hit that, it pulls up from what files I have open. And the reason I like this more than any of the IntelliSense stuff is that I can use it consistently across any language. So even if I'm writing a comment, I can use it on English as well. And so I just get in the same habit. Then once my fingers get in a habit, I don't want the editor second guessing me, because then I'll just be backspacing a lot. But now I want to send this thing, and I have to cast it back to a ubyte. And that is a really hacky way to translate any strut into a ubyte array. So now if I were to send that down, yes, everyone loves VS Code. I'm sure it's fine. It's a beautiful system. Now instead of echoing this, I'm just going to print it out. And when I make, and there's my recompile from scratch of my whole system. And now I'll run the server and port 8080, which I have open for me. Now if I've done this right, I should be able to see one window. You can only that is a whoops. Now if I run Rhonaroids over here, and that's my server, at some point, yeah, when I press left, it will send down that message, which has my very interesting data. So what the server will have to do is take this and distribute it among all the various users on the system to make that to turn that into a multiplayer thing. So I'm going to make a Websocket, all sockets, and inside I might want that later. But now I'm just going to go all sockets, Websocket, and when I receive it, I'm going to go through and just distribute that back down to everyone. On a LAN, by the way, I'd probably just use a UDP broadcast, but and there is a WebRTC thingy that I could not figure out in time to do this, but .send. And then we don't want to, actually we do want to send it back to the original person. So we just go ahead and do that. And then over here we will go you have to remove it if socket is WebSocket. Just go ahead and remove that. And now since I've G-shared that, pretty obviously there's a thread contention here that I should probably go ahead and do. Just use that as my cute little mutex. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I'm sure people who actually know how to use threads correctly are screaming in agony, saying this is insane. I don't care. Send, that's not an array. I want to send it to that individual. So now that I have this little thing able to accept the data and spear it back, if I go back to my client, which is this window, instead of actually taking effect as I press the key, I want it to take effect as you receive it from the server. So up here on message, and this is all left over from me trying to debug this thing, but we will undo it and do control update pointer cast. That's another good way to do the cast. This is actually better than the array server. If you cast it to an array and you get the first element, that's the same as grabbing the pointer off of it. Now if cu dot, and just to hack this up really quick. So now instead of doing this change, we'll do it up here. And in theory, if I'm not assuming I haven't screwed this up bad, I need to run the server. I should be able to get more or less the same behavior back from here. Nope, what did I do? Array of size 12. Yes, I know it doesn't align. Whatever. Like I care. Did I not put the whole thing in? No. So here I am going on about how, you know, just do it crazy. It'll be fine. Well, there we go. Now, here's the fun part. If I did all this right and I recompile, it doesn't. It needs runtime support for that. You're kidding me. Okay. Then we're not doing it that way. Back to the old reinterpret cast. Do it that way. Yeah. So now I'm running the same program. If I hit left, then in theory I should see it over here too, and I do, because the server is now distributing the control over to both screens. And what did I? WTF? That means my Websocket got corrupted. I screwed something up. But now, if I make all these control things be events in a timer that the server controls, then each person can run their own copy of the game and have a little fun with it. So let's say I do left and right the very same way. Let's see what happened with my WebSocket server. Yep, it's out of sync. How the heck did I do that? So I can rotate both ways. And No, I skipped the bullets again because I wanted to jump to the networking because I'm running out of time. And actually, I'm just about at the end of my allotted schedule here. So it is not actually playable. I let myself get far too sidetracked. But I'm going to take and, like, comment, and subscribe. Go on my blog, etc., etc. And I will announce this when I get a chance to finish it some point next week. I don't know what I did with that WebSocket server. I should not have broken it doing it this way. But you never know, I probably screwed that up at some point. Or there's also been my WebSocket server I've barely used. I prefer to do things more restful and event sourcey. So I've barely used this thing, and I know the other guy who uses CGI.d, he had a few patches for the WebSocket server in the past, so I might not have applied them correctly. But yeah, since I'm out of time, I'm actually going to go ahead and leave it here. If we want to come back later, again, let me know. I could turn on the stream again if you guys want to know, or I'll just link you to a blog where I write it up. I was hoping we could play here, but I'm just too scatterbrained. And now you know I have 77 libraries that I've started, and none of which I call 100% done. I jump around too much. Let me just for the fun here. What did I do? I would like to know what that assert error actually is. So if I hit it enough, you're not crashing. Yes, crash on me. And when it does the multiplayer, the point is that the controls will be shared, and then that timestamp will be able to synchronize everything. And as a result, you'll all be playing your own copy of the game, but we'll share controls, meaning it would work if it was synchronized. Well, why will it not crash again? I must have done something wrong. Whatever, now it doesn't want to crash because it knows I'm looking for it. A fun fact with the rotation, you can just go crazy and have it do stuff. And if you rotate back to 2 pi per frame, that is, of course, equal to 0. So you can have some fun with that. I didn't get to show colors. Oh well. Let me check my notes. What else do I want to mention? Type info. Yes. I want to change the type info. I'd love it if it was templated and if the functions themselves were templated, but the templated functions were implemented with type erasure, so it doesn't bloat the executable. I have all kinds of crazy plans for that. Oh yeah, my other idea earlier, let's do a bike shed application. You all get to choose a color, but that's not that fun. I actually did cover all the points, so while I meandered, I hit all of my notes. So we're out of time today, but I appreciate you all coming on, and hopefully we'll be able to dab a bit on the DConf call and get back to finish this at some point. And yeah, feel free to send me any emails if you want to chat and know more, or I'm always on my beloved IRC channel. So jump on if you want to talk, and I will see you all later. Bye.